Hey guys, how you been? This is Matthias, and this is my review on the American national security strategy of the Trump administration, which has been published just a couple of months ago, probably not probably just on the November of 2025. And This is the fourth episode, all right. And today is the day, today is 14th of January 2026, and the date is Wednesday, all right. Um, Wednesday. Uh, I was discussing on the third video. I was discussing this paragraph, which is fundamentally isolationist. All right, it condemns the previous American administrations for their uncalled for adventurism in trying to shoulder the global responsibility and the mirage of or the illusion of free trade, which hollowed out the American industrial base and so forth. And I was responding to that because I find it simply an isolationist ideal, and isolationism in the international relation doesn't take you further because it's simply if you try to isolate yourself, you are simply trying to put your head in the sand, and the problem doesn't go away. I mean, one thing that is a historical fact is that any country cannot avoid international engagement, and that engagement should be active. It cannot be passive. You cannot be waiting until the problem happens. Rather, as much as you could, you engage in international relations in such a way that it furthers your interest, it protects your security, and you have to be actively engaged in the idea that we will not respond or we will not engage in a meaningful manner, or would not be dealing with problems until they present themselves a challenge to our security and interest is completely naivety, because um, by the time the problems mature to be to be shown on the radars of your screen, on the screen of the screen of your radar, put it. Uh, they have been they have been transpired a lot of processes. They have gone through a lot of metastasization, evolution, and you wouldn't understand them. All right, it is it would be such a complicated problem. Therefore, you have to be always active, present, and keep yourself up to date. You have to understand other cultures, what's trans actually um you know even though I've been reading this book. Actually, I wouldn't say I've read it, what you call it. I just read the first 20 pages or something. When I get free time, I just go through it. And it talks about the CIA, tactics, how they hide things and so forth. How they use magicians. It is a little bit I mean, it's counterintuitive. It doesn't look like intelligence organizations would be using the skills of the magician to carry out some spying and spying. And I was reading there, and it goes on and relating how CIA come to be and so forth and so forth. Did you know that the Americans do not believe that? All right, the Americans were not of the opinion that they need an active intelligence gathering operation across the world, and then, they have to study, understand, and scrutinize what is happening in other countries. What are the forces? What are the things? And how can we influence them? They were not in that business. All right, they don't think that they need to do that. Not only that, they were so righteous minded, sort of, all right, and they were so I mean, did you know that, for example, the Americans started protecting their president, all right, because the presidents being assassinated time and again, and they were assassinated for every trivial reason. Somebody get mad and just pull a gun and shoot them. All right, it's the world is like that. All right, and I mean the American presidents of because it was constructed on the ideals of republicanism. It was built on the ideals of all men are equal and and they are entitled by they are endowed by their creator, this unalienable rights and so forth and so forth. Um, that that kind of foundational principle creates this mindset that the president is just a normal human being. Yes, he's a normal human being, but he's going to be targeted. You cannot trifle with him, all right? He should be protected, he should be guarded. Otherwise, every silly thing, every silly personal contentions and so forth can get to him. That's what happens with I think there are 4 or 5 American presidents who have been assassinated, all right? And if you look at it, you would see that, I mean, for example, now the president doesn't go around with an open, what you call it, with a convertible. Yeah, he is being driven with this specially constructed car called the Beast, which has got, this door which weighs a ton and so forth. Why? Because the world is that crazy. Because you are a law-abiding, very nice person, doesn't mean that the world is like that. All right, the world is a very chaotic, unpredictable, lunatic place. It's a very dangerous place. All right, and therefore, I mean, the Americans learned that progressively. I wanna show you something. So, I'm reading this book, and it says, some declassified CIA, CIA manual for trickery and deception, I don't know how true it is, or is it just, promotional scheme, but it goes on to describe how CIA agents and so forth use different kinds of trickery and deception, to do their, their spying jobs. And in that, I in the introductory part of that book, I find this, let me read you this 2 paragraph, and I want to draw a lesson from that. All right, while with its establishment, I'm reading from here, with its establishment in 1947, one thing that you should understand, until 1947, it looks like, all right, it looks like the United States didn't have a dedicated intelligence gathering an operation, and I don't know how it survived with that. I wish we, I mean, I wish we asked this, uh, this thing about how did the United States survive uh, without without an active um, intelligence organization until the 1940s, all right? Because the world is such a dangerous place. But how do you survive in it without having I mean, you have to gather intelligence. You have to understand how the world is working. You have to understand who's doing what. Otherwise, you'd be surprised a lot. The United States survived without a centralized intelligence agency until the 1940s by relying on ad hoc military and diplomatic intelligence network. So I think, I mean, you cannot deny, most of the time, if you look at the evolution of organizations or departments, and they would be discovered as time goes by. I mean, we are not that, we are not that omniscient to know everything about everything. Rather, what we do is we learn from our mistakes. All right. So it looks like the United States learns about the importance of creating a dedicated organization which is solely responsible for the gathering of intelligence and providing the necessary information to the political elites after going through a lot of problems as it appears. Because what I want to check was, maybe there was an intelligence organization but we didn't know about it, because most historical accounts tell you, um, CIA is established in the 1940s and so forth. So it begs the question, given the importance of intelligence and what is that? Spying is one of the oldest jobs, they say. One of the oldest jobs with something else. I don't know. I don't wanna say. It's one of the oldest jobs. So if it is such an oldest job, how come the Americans didn't have such a dedicated organization that is solely tasked or responsible with the purpose of gathering intelligence? And so, I mean, most historical accounts tell you that there was no intelligence organization. CIA was established in the 1940s. Early U.S. intelligence that's pre 1940s Revolutionary War. George Washington ran extensive spy networks. He had the spy network using codes, invisible ink, or really in double agents. I'm just trying correcting my historical understanding because it begs the question to say that Americans survived. You cannot survive without intelligence, in my view. No other government because the world is a very dangerous place. All right. So, I mean, actually, the question just appears now, but I think it doesn't negate my core idea. My core idea being we live in such a dangerous world. All right. Therefore, you cannot disengage. You cannot isolate yourself and wait for problems to be, monumental before you deal with them. That I mean, people shouldn't do that. And this is not a strategy. All right. You should be ahead of your enemies, ahead of your problem as much as possible. Especially if you have got the time, the opportunity, the resource. All right. You have to always step ahead of the world and should be aware of what's happening in every corner of the world. And isolationism doesn't work. All right. It looks like we shouldn't spend our money. I mean, I don't know how the Americans come to adopt this idea that we should focus. I mean, I'm not saying overstretch yourself in create cost centers which doesn't have any strategic importance. But all right, I'm not saying that, but you cannot deny the importance of global engagement. You have to know everything. You have to know everything that is known. All right, you have to spend every resource, every penny, and it pays. How does it pay? It pays in a lot of ways. It's what you call it. I mean, you might say, why do I need a government? That's the idea of the anarchist, by the way. All right, people think anarchists are those unruly, radical, or anti-social, anti-social personalities or sociopaths. No, they are not. I mean, there can be such anarchists, but there is a whole complete theory called anarchism. All right, that argues we don't need a government. We can just conduct our affairs, but that's in a wish world because not everybody want to abide by the law. Not everybody appreciate the importance of the rule of law. People have to be checked. People have to be the world needs. All right. Um, Not everybody simply. All right. Not everybody wants to abide by the law. People need to be convinced that miscalculation is disadvantageous. Otherwise, they would always miscalculate. So I was wondering, actually, I mean, I'm detouring from my original idea, but I was trying to question this common narrative that CIA was established in the 1940s. You cannot exist without an organized, deliberate. Maybe the Americans learned in the 1940s that intelligence gathering doesn't start when the problem surfaces. That is too late, too little. All right. Intelligence gathering should be all right. You cannot be passive about intelligence gathering. You don't wait until the the problem comes up. You don't wait until the war breaks out. You don't wait until the enemy infiltrates you and so forth. I mean, you actively work. So here I want you to see something. With its establishment in July 1947, the CIA received two primary missions: prevent surprise foreign attacks, All right. Why does it become like, preventing surprise attacks becomes important? Because it's an ever-present danger. It's like, an accident hiding and waiting and bidding to happen. Therefore, you have to always be vigilant. You have to be always like, you need situational awareness. You have to understand your surrounding. You have to understand what people are cooking. You have to understand what people are up to. Because if you don't, they would surprise you, and it would be too late. It would be too late. And the CIA was dedicated, it says, like for the purpose of stopping or preventing surprise attacks against the United States, encountered the advance of communism into Europe and third world nations. Officers of the agency at the CIA became known would be on the front lines of the Cold War for four tense decades, fueled by nuclear stalemate, incompatible ideologies, and a Soviet government obsessed with secrecy. Uh, you know, like, you know, so at home, the USSR security and intelligence organizations, the KGB and its predecessors, how the international population and approach the attempt to undermine foreign governments aligned with the West. By the way, it's not only just characteristics of USSR, like now any political system that's not liberally democratic, as to my understanding, as to my conviction, is always out there to undermine you as a liberal democratic, as a liberal democracy, because somehow a successful liberally democratic country always exposes the weakness of other political systems. So it like, it poses a danger to the existence of all autocratic governments. Therefore, these autocratic governments, because whether they like it or not, because they find themselves in, globally speaking, in ideological battle, they will always try to sabotage, cattle, or cause you harm in every way they can. Therefore, you cannot neglect them. You cannot ignore them. But the most important point, the Soviet Union, the most important point, uh, where do I go? Like, the Soviet Union successful testing of a nuclear weapon in 1949 caught the United States by surprise. Can you imagine that? Like, being called by surprise um, about Soviet Union's nuclear capacity. That's you cannot miscalculate in this time. Especially in the present world, if you are caught off guard, you are almost done. Yeah, right. Maybe at that time, it was not many things were not possible. But now, if your enemies finds you, yeah, right. If your enemies, whoever they are, find you somehow unprepared in can you imagine, for example, nuclear weapons falling in the hands of terrorists? Can you imagine weapons of mass destruction, like falling in the hands of, lunatics, be it domestic terrorists or international terrorists? All right, it would be too late to act once that thing happens. I mean, once they kill, 50 million people, 20 million people, you can go and kill them, but that's almost pointless. So, and you cannot do such an extensive defensive intelligence if you don't already establish the communication, the relation, and do all the necessary job. So to say that these international engagements and so forth doesn't have any bearing for Americans' interest, eh, I mean, the average people, if if a common American says that, maybe you can say he's a geopolitical illiterate. But for an administration, political administration, to echo that, it is nothing less than, all right, and a coffee house politics, all right, a coffee house politics, just talking, chit chatting. But a serious strategic thinking, all right, you convince the people. Your job is no, 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 no. We need CI, we need international engagement. All right, we need our bases. We need to project powers. We need to uh, keep doing what we're doing, because the world is a very dangerous place, and it's governed by the principle if anything can go wrong, it will. And when it goes wrong, it's much harder and much difficult to manage it. So for example, in the case of, the Russian nuclear capability, the Americans were caught off guard. Because why? Because, they don't think that, I mean, it looks like they were being governed by that idea. I mean, America is a new nation, what you understand, what you should understand. It's a new nation, not only a new nation, as I try to, argue in that series, which I call The Good End Always, it is founded on a unique principle. Therefore, constantly, with, by nature, in its DNA, it is not combative. It's not aggressive force. So, most of the time, it wants to be, a pacify. It is defensive. But that defensiveness, as I said, at times being defensive, to do a successful defensive, maybe you have to be offensive. But that offense shouldn't be going out and bombing everybody. Or it can involve doing business trades, influencing politics, influencing ideologies, influencing cultural views, influencing political, formations, and so forth, so that you don't go to war. All right. And so President Eisenhower received a startling top secret report in 1954 from a commission headed by retired General James Doolittle. I mean, the name is historical in my view, to be honest. All right, you cannot do little. All right, you, when it comes to international relations, especially as a global superpower, which is the envy of the world, you can't afford to do little. It's gonna cost you. You have to do more. You have to engage. You have to participate. You have to dictate. You have to, how you dictate, how you engage is a matter of debate. You have to do it in the most effective, efficient, and feasible way. The question is not whether you should do or not. You should engage unquestionably, but that should be sustainable. That should be effective, and so forth. That we can debate. So that conclude. If the U.S. is, I like this, statement. If the U.S. is to survive, all right, the idea that there is an ocean between us and Europe is the most, ignorant argument, especially for this age. One thing that you should know, the Americans crossed from Europe to the United States to establish that nation. So, even by then, distance have been better. Yes, of course, the historical swamp of Europe. I mean, politically, I mean, the idea when George Washington says, I think we should, keep mind our business. What he was saying was Europe was, embroiled in its own conflict, which is got he, which started some 400, 500, or 600 years ago, and they're fighting for every trivial reasons, and they fight because they are undemocratic. Right? It's a bunch of colonialistic, feudalistic, backward people. All right, fighting over every silly thing. All right, over religion, over, whether somebody should say what you call it, whether somebody should be a Protestant or Catholic. They fight for generations over that thing. Therefore, what I was trying to say is we should not entangle ourselves in the conflict of other people who are fighting for every other nonsense reason. That's the idea. But that doesn't mean that, um, that's always so. I mean, this world is very dynamic. It changes a lot. People get all kinds of ideas. People do a lot of crazy things. You don't know what they think today, and you don't know what they will think tomorrow. Things are changing. Alliances change. Circumstances change. So you have to always keep your sensors up and detect everything that's happening in the world and know how that affects you, know how that affects your interest, your performance, and your sustenance. And you cannot do that overnight. You have to build it. All right, if the establishment of CIA, if there is a historical lesson that the Americans should draw from the establishment of CIA, international engagement should be systematic and it's on time activity. You cannot do it one time and just stop it. No, now the world is safe. No, it wouldn't be safe. Even if everybody becomes liberally democratic, there is a chance to like to have so-called recidivism, and people can go back to what you call it, dictatorship or despotism. Therefore, you have to actively follow up. And how do you do that? You have to engage internationally. You have to have, I mean, how do you spy? You need trade, for example, in addition to other things. You need embassies. You need cultural exchange. You need, connections. You need people that you know, and so forth. You have to establish all that thing. How do you do that? All right. You cannot do that overnight or when the problem, presents itself at your door. You have to establish a long chain of relationships that are meaningful. But the most important thing is the Americans have this notion that because they are law abiding, because they mind their own business, because they have this fair play is, ingrained, it's embedded in the American political economic construction. All right. In all other political systems other than the liberally democratic system, fair play is for the fools. They are conniving. All right. But the Americans want to believe, I mean, the DNA itself, the construction itself. All right. It's on the idea that all men are created equal. But that is normative. All right. That is and ought to be. That is really, it's like a moral horizon. Not so many people appreciate that. All right. Not so many people like the idea of they are equal with other people. No, like they want an even advantage. They want to kill, they want to steal, they want to cheat. All right. And they think that, God has given that special ability to them because they, they consider it a blessing. These are crazy. The world is filled with crazy people. So the Americans cannot, this is what you call it, biblically speaking. Let me use a biblical allegory. All right. Jesus said, be be humble like a pigeon, but smart like a serpent. All right. Because you cannot do it by being only a pigeon. Because, I say, even he says, even in, the most, I mean, Jesus come to die, unlike any other, any other person in history, he comes to die, but, he takes people. I'm sending you, all right, like a sheep among wolves. So be careful. The world is packed with wolves. And if you are a man of principle, if you have, if you have a wealth to protect, if you have a hardworking, honest earning person, you cannot be only honest. All right. You have to be also smart. Otherwise, all the other people who are outside of your border are always machinating. Their minds work that way. If people are not hard workers, disciplined, and self-respecting individuals, almost you can be sure that they are spending the rest of their time machinating or conniving, trying to take I heard some, what is that? I think is it 50 cent or whatever. Said as I was working hard to make money, there were other people working hard to take my money. All right. As you have to understand that this is the world that we live in. As we work hard to live the best life that we can afford, there are other people working hard, all right, to take whatever is ours. So if they the American sentiment, the American mentality, the American Declaration of Independence, the American Constitution is right because it makes you a pigeon. You have to be a pigeon. All right. That's what distincts you. That's what differentiates the United States from the rest of the world. But that pigeon, if it has to survive in this wolf pack, all right, yeah, wolf pack, the treacherous world, it has to also have the wit of the snake, or it has to have the wisdom, all right? It has to be vigilant and guard itself against all kinds of vile and evil influences. And how can you do that without a global engagement? And so, like, if the United States is to survive, long-standing American concepts of fair play must be reconsidered. We must learn to subvert, sabotage, and destroy our enemies by cleverer, more sophisticated, and more effective methods than those used against us. It looks like the American discovered this thing late. All right, the world is out there to get you. All right, it's not like we do like we mind our business and you mind your business resonates with everybody. The Americans cannot live on the idea of, or any other country cannot live on the idea of fair play. It's like, you have to play fair, and but expect that people can be unfair to you, or nations can be unfair to you. And history has proven that, always there are circumstances whereby, all right, countries, nations, individuals would be unfair, and they want an unfair advantage. So this is unrealistic. What surprises me is I listen, for example, some professors, Professor John Mearsheimer. All right, he thinks he's, or he says, I'm a realist when it comes to, international relation politics. And in the world of realism, power is right, and what dictates, what creates the balance is the power balance between the two other countries. All right, therefore, but once he claimed that he is a realist, his piece of advice to the United States government is for the United States government to disengage itself from every other part of the world which doesn't welcome its presence, and retract itself back to the territory, the border that it's most welcome, and leave the rest of the world to be influenced, all right, by every other global mania. All right, that's not realism. How can you say you are a realist advocating such a policy? Realism, in my view, is detaching yourself from any kind of political ideology, and detaching yourself any kind of political ideology, and working on the existing fact, working on the existing realities on the ground. The existing realities on the ground teach you that if you leave any part of the world, or to any other part, any other antagonistic force, that force would not only create that, use that, part of the world, or that part of the globe to its own advantage, but it will build the strength and come to attack you. Therefore, how can you be realist? I mean, if that's the general fact or historical tendency of geopolitics. If you leave it, if you give people who are less just, less fair than you, the opportunity, the resource, and so forth, and didn't make sure that you know what they think, or you are ahead of them, and you know every step of them, they're going to use whatever advantage they have against you. Therefore, how can you be realist? All right, by retreating. I don't think that's realism. So what I want to say is, if the United States is to survive, it's a question of survival. So, what Trump says here, or what his national security strategies is, he says is, what is that? He goes on to say, our elites badly miscalculated America's willingness to shoulder forever global burdens to which the American people saw no connection. The American people couldn't say that we saw no connection to our national interest. All right, our global our global involvement. All right, our global involvement doesn't have any connection to our national interest. If they say that, they say that because they are ignorant. If they say that because the people who are to educate them, the people who are to keep them informed, are not doing their job. Rather, they are doing all kinds of shares to get money. All right. I'm not like against the concept of making money, but if you say you are an opinion maker, you are an influencer, I suppose you gotta do your job right. All right, you gotta teach your people that it's your in your national interest that the United States, all right, make feel make felt its presence across the world because it's directly tied to your survival, let alone your economic interest. All right, let your guards down. In no time, people would come, all right, tear you apart, steal everything that you have, enslave you. They don't hesitate to do that. So it's so stupid, so ignorant, so uneducated to say that the American people didn't so they might, but it's the job of the politician, it's the job of the leader to convince Americans that no, this is in your interest. It's to your survival, to your prosperity. So I don't think that the security strategy had an open eye understanding, they are not looking at the world with open heart and with a teachable heart to understand for what it is, not rather they are just uh they are just telling the people what the people want, there are this loser guys going around talking shit, all right, spinning every kind of conspiracy theory, and the people have been swayed, all right, by this idea, and they think that democracy requires intelligence, by the way, and we live in this world of mass media, mass communication, and you can misinform people. I've been reading Mein Kampf by Hitler, all right, and also I've been reading some CIA, by that time there was no CIA, but what they did was, they created this group of intellectuals from, if I'm not mistaken, Princeton, Harvard, and so forth, to profile Hitler. And in that document, it says, Hitler is a propaganda master. All right, he knows, he is a propaganda master. This people say it's Joseph Goebbels, blah blah, but Hitler excels him. It looks like, all right. So he knows how to do propaganda. And in that main camp, he says, with propaganda, all right, it says, with the power of propaganda, you can make the heaven look like it's hell. And you can make the hell look like it is a heaven. And propaganda works, it regardless of the person's educational status. A person can be an engineer, all right, the person can be like having a doctorate in philosophy or whatever. With a successful propaganda, you can sway any kind of people, it says. And if you and one of the interesting things he says is, if anybody questions, all right, the power of propaganda in swaying people's mind, regardless of their education, regardless of their economic status, it's because that person doesn't understand how that thing works. So it's very powerful thing. And what I'm trying to say is, people can be deceived. People can be misinformed. All right, following the popular ideas is not leadership. Of course, you have to listen. I mean, when it comes to democracy, I think we have to make this distinction between. I mean, how do you understand democracy, for example? I know I'm dwelling on this, but I guess it's important. How do you what do you understand by democracy? Democracy is not only the will of. I mean, people can make stupid decisions. All right, people can make stupid decisions. Actually, what raised the question? All right, what raised the question about the relevance of democracy is because people's vulnerability to every popular idea. People can be easily convinced to believe in every shot. All right, and it has been the feature of humanity for centuries. It has been one of the reasons democracy has been hated throughout history. Let me show you something from like a guy called Robert Firmer's book. So what I wanted to show you was, in case if you haven't come across it, I want to introduce you to an old book called Patriarcha, or the Natural Power of Kings. And by the way, it's to this in reaction to this book that John Locke wrote his very interesting. I mean, that seminal political theory book called the Two Treatises of Government. So on this book, this guy called Robert Filmer. This is, by the way, a very old book. It's written in the 60s, 80s. And in this book, Robert Filmer argues people are you cannot depend on people. That's why democracy doesn't work. All right, you cannot depend on people because they are whimsical and they have vicissitudes and they change every time. They change their ideas every time. Therefore, democracy doesn't work. And it's in refutation of this idea that John Locke wrote. That's a very, what you call it. You are trying to tell us that we are slaves, but we are not. In he was reacting to that. But one thing doesn't change. This Robert Filmer argues something very interesting about the nature of popular politics at times, not always. All right, in the absence of good political leadership, the public can be easily misled, misdirected, misinformed, and he goes on to say something interesting, and I want to read that for you. Searching, a lot of files are opened on my computer, and it's existential slow. All right, let's go. Let's go. So he's suspicious of popular politics because of the nature of people, and he says, "I know not how to give a better character of the people than can be gathered from such authors as lived among us or near the popular states." So he's arguing. I mean, this guy is for example, Thucydides, Xenophon, Livy, Tacitus, Cicero, and Sallust said, uh, people who lived within or around the so-called popular, polities in the classical period. That's in the Roman and Greek time. So he's saying, these people have known popular politics, and they are telling us how people are unpredictable and how democratic republican kind of governance is impossible. So he's trying to describe the unpredictable, unruly nature of people. And so he's bringing them as reference here. So he says, "I know not how to give a better character of the people than can be gathered from such authors as lived amongst or near the popular states." These popular states being those popular states which existed in the classical times, in the before the 5th century AD, have said them in their true colors. All right, the true color of people have been meticulously, professionally, um, wisely painted by these ancient great thinkers. Thucydides, if you read his the Peloponnesian book, why I mean, the not the Peloponnesian, wow, it's such a wonderful book. Never read Xenophon, but tried to read. Anyway, these guys are ancient thinkers and writers, and they have beautiful books. All right. So he's borrowing. He would say, "I will borrow some of their sentences, in which they use to describe people, the mass." All right. So, um, these guys, all right. This is how they describe people. There is nothing more uncertain than the people. People are very you cannot be certain in them. They change every time. All right. Their opinions are as variable and sudden as tempests. There is neither truth nor judgment in them when they act in mass. All right. So, I mean, the mass is not always right, what I'm trying to say. I guess you understand me. I'm not against democracy. By the way, you have to understand the nitty gritty of this thing. All right. What I'm what I'm arguing against is the idea that the American people saw no connection to their national interest. That is, America, our elites badly miscalculated America's willingness to shoulder forever global burdens to which, even the sentence is not good, don't you think? I don't think it's grammatically correct, to be honest, because if you read it carefully, it's it's full of semantic errors, if not syntactic errors. Our elites, what it's trying to, yeah, our elites badly miscalculated America's willingness to shoulder forever global. All right. Uh, I mean, it's trying to say the elite miscalculated that the Americans are willing to shoulder global burdens. All right. The American elites miscalculated that the American peoples are forever willing to, to shoulder the burden of the globe. But I don't think it said it in a nice way. Maybe I don't know. So the American people, it looks like, are under the impression that they are shouldering the wallet on the burdens of the wallet, but it's not. All right, that's a misunderstanding. It's the job of the leader to clear this misunderstanding, to clear this, miscalculation, and make them understand that you are not, carrying the burden of the wallet. Rather, you are defending your interest, and that defense of your interest entails global involvement. All right, and it's up to the incumbent, up to the politician, to educate its own people the importance of American involvement in global politics. But if that government is under the impression that people don't like it and that is wrong, that is not democracy. You might call it democracy, but that's not democracy. And if you consider that's democracy, let me tell you how popular politics is depicted by those deep political thinkers, the likes of Robert Filmer, who tells you about people when peoples are not educated, led properly, there is nothing more uncertain than the people. Their opinions are as variable and sudden as tempest. There is neither truth nor judgment in them. They are not led by wisdom to judge of anything, but by violence and rashness. All right? Nor put they any difference between things true and false. After the manner of cattle, they follow the herd that goes before. Like, they're just mindless, followers at times, not always. In the absence of the right political system, in the absence of good political leadership, the people can be herded. They can be acting like a cattle, just following, whatever goes before them. All right. They have a custom always to favor the worst and weakest. They are the most prone to superstition, suspicions. I think it's an old English, all right, it's written in 60, 80. So, and used to condemn men for guilty upon any false suggestion. They are apt to believe all news, especially if it is sorrowful, and like fame. They also like fame. They make it more in believing when there is no author, all right? The kind of things which they like to believe is when there is no known author about it. All right, some anonymous guy said this. They like to uplift us such story. That's the characteristics of the people. They fear those evils which themselves have, seen. For example, the Americans can be convinced to isolate themselves from international involvement, and once they isolate themselves from international politics, when the problem comes, they would be the first to shit in their pants. It's characteristics of popular politics. It's almost what you call it. It is a great force with amorphous and adaptable moving capability, and it's as destructive as a flood, unless it is directed, unless you can use. Did you know that I learned it very recently, you can you can pressure water enough that it can cut any steel. let alone still I think like it can cut anything, all right, or like it can come in masses in completely, like have you seen the tsunamis? They destroy everything in their path. I mean, they just flood villages. They I mean, their power surprises me always. The people is like that, but like you have to control it, you have to manage it. How do you control it? With understanding, all right? If it is not laid with understanding a political system, it's the most dangerous force. And that's what they like the ancients fear about, popular politics. You need elite directing, leading this popular mass, because unless led properly, it's the most dangerous thing in the world. It's nothing less than what you call it, the biblical level, deluge. It can create that. It's so powerful. It can destroy anything on its path. But you can, I mean, it's like, what is that? There is a tire advertisement that I like, power is nothing without control. All right. The mass is power. It doesn't have control. All right. It's so powerful, but it doesn't have control. And it's your job. It's leadership means controlling man, the excellence of political systems and the excellence of politicians is in taming this powerful nature force called the mass. So to say that the mass say and obey is not leadership, is being swapped by them. And that's so destructive, because the people is so uncertain, it goes on, like fear those evils which they themselves have seen. They are most desirous of new stirs and change, and are enemies of quiet and rest. Whatever is giddy or headstrong, they account manlike and courageous, but whatever is modest or provident seems sluggish. Each man has a care of his particular, and thinks basely of common good. They look upon approaching mischiefs as they do upon thunder. Only every man wishes it may not touch his own person. It is the nature of them. They must serve basely or demeanor proudly, for they know no me. All right, they don't know balance. They are always in the extreme. Either they should be broken down into pieces and made subject, or they have to break other people's down and impose themselves upon others. So the public is a combustible material, the mass. But it is the genius of political science, the genius of statesmanship is managing that force of nature, all right, through political systems and the quality of leadership, the excellence of leadership. Now, it's not like listening to them is not leadership. It's not democracy. That is, what you call it, the worst form of tyranny, the worst form of tyranny, even more than the most tyrannical. It's like if because the people as a mass, they are a force without mind. They are so powerful. They are so inundating, but there is no mind. There is no control. All right, it's like unleashing AI without any human control, kind of thing. All that computing power, all that algorithmic power, all that analytic power, without intelligible, all right, human guidance, and it's very dangerous thing. So to argue that, all right, in this badly written sentence, in my view, all right, uh, to argue that the Americans have miscalculated, the Americans, the Americans people's, tolerance to shoulder the burden of the world, that patience is inexhaustible. No, it's not patience. All right. The Americans are not carrying or shouldering the burdens of the world. They are pursuing their interest, but that pursuance of their own interest inevitably has that component of involving yourself in the affairs of the world, because you live in the world, you cannot be out of it. All right. So it's completely wrong, all right, to say that the American people are tired of shouldering the burden. No, they are not shouldering nobody's burden. Yes, it's like what you call it, for example, uh, a business person doing a business, all right, it's solving a problem. It is being bringing solutions to people, but it is not doing it. because he wants to. I mean, there are some people, all right, like some people hypocritical enough, maybe, or all right, altruistic enough, who would be doing whatever they do, um, because they want to benefit others, not themselves. But the normal human economy, the normal human dynamics is, it's as you pursue your interest that you benefit others. I mean, if you want, I can bring you that beautiful argument from Adam Smith. It's not from the butcher, from the butcher's kindness that we expect our dinner, but it's from his desire. We give him what we want, and he gave us what we want. It's exchange world. So the Americans are not going out in the world because they are doing some kind of evangelical work. All right, at times they can be doing that, but every act has got unintended benefit, and it's the world is organized in that's the nature of human polity. All right, it is always give and take. That person doing a business is doing a business. In doing a business, he solves your problem. For example, he provides you with a cafeteria, a coffee, like a restaurant, a department store, or a transportation service, or manufacturing products, blah blah. It is benefiting you, but the purpose of the business is not to benefit you per se. All right, but to earn itself some kind of income and benefit while pursuing its own interest. The what you call it, the byproduct of it would be your benefit. Therefore, Americans are not shouldering global burden. They are going out and doing whatever they have to do to protect their own interests, and it's incumbent upon American politicians to educate, to enlighten their people in such a way. All right, but it's undeniable that as they go out, as they engage, as they trade, as they exchange, as they involve in cultural exchange, they will be benefiting the world. At the same time, also they will be learning. All right, they would be getting intelligence, they would be getting business opportunities, they would be getting all sorts of things. So to say that the American people doesn't want it, so stop it. All right, that was what I was trying to say. uh I'll continue in the next video. I know I'm dwelling on a chapter, paragraph, but what you call it, you cannot go past your conviction. So I will see you in the next video. That would be the fifth video. Thank you.